We live in Central Florida and we're not far from the ocean, and we love to go to Canaveral National Seashore. It's our favorite beach. We recommend it to everyone. We've been going there for probably a decade and a half, and I only just realized that Canaveral National Seashore is right next to New Smyrna Beach, which is the shark bite capital of the world. Every year, more people are bitten by sharks at New Smyrna Beach than any other place on the planet. And we've been swimming, my wife and I, our kids, our grandkids, we've been swimming in the waters just down the coast, adjoining to New Smyrna Beach, enjoying the pristine setting of Canaveral, not realizing the danger that lurks so close at hand. That's really the way it is for a lot of us with YouTube. We use YouTube all the time. I've used it for years, and we derive so much value out of it. I honestly can't imagine not having YouTube available to me as a resource. I have been truly enriched by all that YouTube offers. But it's a big YouTube ocean, and there's a lot of dangers in those waters. So we're going to talk about those dangers. What are they, and why do they exist? We're going to talk about whether or not YouTube has adequate barriers to protect us from those dangers. And we'll talk about how we can enjoy, especially our youth and our teens can enjoy the marvelous content that YouTube has to offer and avoid the shark attacks. Now, the very first thing, of course, is to realize with any user-generated content, you don't have to have an FCC broadcast license to publish. Anyone can publish on YouTube. Think of the most despicable, depraved human being you can imagine. They're probably posting on YouTube. Think of the most marvelous person, most angelic that you've ever heard of. They're probably posting on YouTube as well, and all of us in between. And the content on YouTube runs that same gamut. Now, we might hope that YouTube's machine learning, its policies, its staff are going to work hard to protect us and keep all of that bad content away from us, and especially away from our kids. But that's not the case. Think of the enormity of the task. The Atlantic reported earlier this year that there's 14 billion videos on YouTube. That is a staggering amount of content. I can't even imagine everything that would fill up 14 billion videos. It's all on YouTube. And every minute of every hour of every day, every minute, 500 hours of new content is flowing into the YouTube ocean. There's no amount of policing that's going to make sure that all of that content is safe and healthy for our families. And by the way, it's not intended to be. YouTube is mostly full of content that's intended for adults, not for kids. And YouTube's policies, as good as they are, they're very liberal, and they're not going to match up or align with your family's values and what is appropriate for your kids and your teens. So there's a lot of bad content on YouTube. And here's the other issue that makes YouTube especially challenging. It's the YouTube algorithm. We've all experienced it. YouTube pays very close attention to what we search for and what we watch. And then it starts to bring more of that content to us every time we open up the app or go to the web page. That's great, and it helps most of us as adults to find things more easily in that 14 billion universe of videos. But when it comes to our youth and our teens, this can become an especially dangerous formula. The reason is all of our teens have natural curiosities, natural impulses that are perfectly healthy. And without something like YouTube, you'd have to go to a lot of effort to find out more and satisfy those curiosities and impulses. And that amount of effort acts as sort of natural guardrails, keeping our youth in a safe space. YouTube obliterates the guardrails. YouTube obliterates the effort. If you are a teen, you get onto YouTube, you type in something to satisfy some impulse or natural curiosity, it brings it right to you. And it not only brings it to you in that moment, but it comes and knocks on your door again later, offering more. It shoves it into your pocket, onto that phone that's with you 24/7, and it puts it in enticing thumbnails to draw you in and capture your attention. So YouTube can take what might be a healthy, natural curiosity with our teens and inflame those things into maybe even an obsession. It's a very unhealthy combination. And when you add to this the fact that our teens are still developing the very capacity they need to resist those impulses, according to the American Psychological Association, that our teens are still developing those capacities to say no to the short-term impulses for a much better long-term result. They don't have that fully developed yet, and they won't for years to come. So the YouTube algorithm then acts like chum, attracting the sharks to the very waters that we're playing in. And that's a very dangerous combination. So what are we going to do about that? If we have all of this content that has a lot that we don't want our kids to consume, we have our very naturally curious teens with their impulses that they're still learning how to govern, and we have the YouTube algorithms that's tuned to bring us whatever we're interested in and whatever people like us are interested in right to our pockets and our smartphones. What are we going to do about that? If YouTube then had some good barriers that we could put in place, maybe that would still be a good formula. We'd be all right. But in my mind, the barriers are inadequate. Now, when I say in my mind, let me give you a little bit of perspective about my background. I am a former Chief Information Security Officer, and that means that I and my teams, we worked 24/7 to protect our companies from cyber criminals breaking in and stealing from us. When I worked at companies like JetBlue and Eli Lilly and Herc Rentals, we relied on two major controls that we really wanted to make sure were in place no matter what. One was a preventive control, a barrier, so that people couldn't get in. And the second was the detective control, which if something slipped through, which inevitably they do, we could quickly respond to whatever got past our defenses and make sure that we neutralized it. So those are the two things I'm looking for when it comes to YouTube. Now, YouTube has 3 levels of parental controls that you can apply. The first one is YouTube for kids. The second is YouTube's parental controls for preteens. And the third is YouTube's controls for teens. And I'm going to try to cover each of these relatively quick. YouTube for Kids is a separate app, and it contains curated content. So it doesn't have all of the content that's available on YouTube. It's intended for kids from preschool up to preteens, but honestly, your preteens are probably going to be growing out of YouTube for Kids pretty easily. Now, there's 3 content settings that you can set. One is for preschool kids, another content setting is for kids 5 to 8, and then one for older kids 9 to 12 years old. The great news with YouTube for Kids is that these content settings do a terrific job of preventing inappropriate content from getting to your kids. Also, with the Watch It Again selection in YouTube for Kids, anytime you like, parents can go in and see what content your kids have been watching. So you have good preventive and good detection controls in place with YouTube for Kids. Now, having said that, I would consider YouTube for Kids similar to letting your kids play at the beach. You're going to let them wade into that shallow water, but you're going to keep a very close eye when they're in the water or anywhere close to it. They should not be using YouTube for kids without supervision or without review on your part. YouTube for Kids is not going to take care of the needs of most preteens and teens. It just doesn't have the content they're going to want to see available, and it's kind of a bit of a clunky interface, so they can't find things as easily as they can on the normal YouTube. So your preteens are probably going to start to grow out of YouTube for Kids, and then the question is, what controls are in place for your preteens? YouTube's parental controls are really simplistic. You can set up some basic age restrictions that say that my child's 9 or 10 to 12 years old, and those are those preventive controls that should keep stuff from getting to them. However, in my research and in my own testing, I have found that is absolutely not the case. I have a test account that is set up on YouTube as a 10-year-old. It's got the most restrictive settings in place. And just recently, I tested the word yoga on this test account. And sure enough, I was able to find in these search results some content that was very suspicious. And if I clicked on that, I might not have gotten sexually explicit content, but I guarantee you I would have gotten sexually charged content that is not appropriate for a 10-year-old. YouTube's preventive controls are not keeping the content away from our preteens, and I guarantee you that if they're not doing that for preteens, they're especially not doing that for teens, because they open up those controls even more for teens. And in fact, for teens, the only controls that YouTube really puts in place are if your teen happens to host a channel. Then YouTube is going to help you be aware as the parent of what is the content and what are the live streams that that your child is posting on YouTube. But in neither for the preteens or for the teens do they have adequate preventive controls. That might be okay, seriously, if there were good detection controls in place. And what I mean by that is sometimes the best controls for our kids is just them knowing that we're going to review where they've been, how long they've been, when they've been there, and what they've been viewing. If we just have regular check-ins with our kids and we have that history available to us, that's actually one of the best ways to implement parental controls. Because it's a conversation then with your child. It's a discussion. It's a healthy partnership between you and your child, and you know where they've gone, and they know you're going to be checking on that, so they're going to stay away from the dangerous places, and that acts as really good guardrails. Unfortunately, when it comes to YouTube, for preteens and for teens, they have complete control over their history. They can delete anything out of their history at any time, and there's nothing that you can do with YouTube's parental controls to prevent that from happening. So in other words, there are no detection controls. So we have inadequate prevention controls, we have really no detection controls. So from my perspective, YouTube's parental controls are not adequate to keep our kids safe when they're swimming at the beach with the sharks. So what can we do? What are the ways that we can still enjoy all of that marvelous content in a healthy, safe manner? My recommendation is, first of all, that the only place that you allow YouTube content is on the family TV or on a family computer. And what I mean by that is it should be something that's in a highly trafficked room in the house. It should be only available during prime time when there's lots of people around, and those things act as the detection controls, because now there's people walking by all the time and no one's going to want to go after content that's inappropriate if mom or dad might walk by at any moment. So using YouTube in a common space like that is very safe as long as you make sure it's during prime time in a heavily trafficked area. Putting YouTube on a smartphone, putting YouTube on a tablet, or putting YouTube even allowing YouTube on a laptop is very dangerous. Those can all be taken into the bedroom, into private places where no one is watching and no one will ever know what was being viewed on YouTube. So because of that, my second recommendation is do not allow YouTube in any way, the website or the app, on any personal devices unless you've had a lot of conversations with your teen and you're very confident they're ready to swim in those waters and protect themselves. So recommendation number one, only put it on the family computer, the family television. Recommendation number two, do not allow it on a personal device unless you're confident your teen is ready for that. And then recommendation number three, it's just like going to the beach. If you're going to the beach with your kids, you don't want them to be fearful, but you want them to be aware. So have conversations with your kids. Help them understand, age appropriately, what's out there and what they can do to protect themselves and how they can engage you when they need help. If your kids are aware and they're partnering with you, and if you're only allowing this content to be used in common spaces, you're going to get so much value out of using YouTube, and you're going to avoid any kind of potential shark attack. Now, if you want to understand better how to put parental controls on an iPhone or an iPad, then check out this video here. I'm going to be doing a very similar video for Android and Chrome OS. So hit the subscribe button if you're interested in that and you want to be notified when that content becomes available. I hope that this content has helped you. I really do. And if it has, would you please hit the like button? That will help other parents find the same content and hopefully be able to protect their kids and keep them safe whenever they're using YouTube. All right, now go have some fun with your kids. Thanks.